Hello everyone, I am Ashley Banfield, bringing you deep into our latest investigation. Welcome to the Northern Outpost. Just a quick warning, night has fallen out here, and it is peak frog mating season. There must be thousands of them singing in the marsh right outside these windows. So expect some noise. They are definitely going to raise a racket.
I have a feeling you will hear them loud and clear.
That is just life up north. That is the northern exposure for you.
But we have massive new developments tonight in the Lynette Hooker missing case down in the Bahamas.
Today was basically D-Day.
Frankly, I am incredibly proud of the Coast Guard and their massive effort today. I will show you incredible footage of Coast Guard teams descending
on the Abaco Island group to search multiple key locations,
hoping to find where they believe Lynette Hooker might be hidden.
Investigators suspect her husband, Brian Hooker, is responsible, especially since this is now officially a murder inquiry.
They are tracking him using GPS data from his own devices. Talk about foolish. He had a smartwatch, he had multiple phones, and he clearly thought he could outsmart the law.
His initial alibi was that his wife, Lynette, somehow fell off the back of their dinghy. He claimed he just could not get to her in time.
It is a total fabrication, and digital forensics proves it.
So now, detectives are ignoring his lies and searching the exact coordinates where his GPS actually placed him, hunting for Lynette.
And let me tell you, these investigators mean serious business.
The Coast Guard Investigative Service is absolutely crushing this case. They have been relentless, working 7 days a week for over 7 weeks straight. I know this firsthand because I see them digging into clues at midnight on weekends. Working around the clock, and today, it all came together. A massive 154-foot cutter arrived in the Abaco Islands with a crew of 24 and 12 specialized divers. Honestly, the sheer amount of manpower on the scene today was staggering. They did not even drop anchor before launching their rigid inflatable speedboats. Fast tactical vessels designed for over-the-horizon missions hitting the water immediately. They quickly deployed teams to search multiple locations. They did not even stop to check into their hotels first. They moved like lightning. It was a true strike force. It was highly impressive, and I can confirm they targeted several different spots today. Maggie is back, my friends.
She is the highly trained canine cadaver dog from Broward County, loaned to the Coast Guard for a second deployment.
She was active on site during my previous visit as well.
Now she is back combing the beaches of Lubbers, targeting entirely different grids this time.
Now, we realize Brian's initial account was a total red herring to mislead us.
Initially, Maggie's search patterns were based on Brian's fabricated stories. But since those claims were complete garbage, they are now searching where he actually went, guided by his true GPS coordinates. So, I am going to walk you through exactly what the Coast Guard accomplished today. It is a monumental turning point after more than 7 agonizing weeks of searching. The Coast Guard arrives with solid intelligence, heading straight to the precise coordinates where Brian's tracking devices put him. I sat down with Carly Aylesworth, Lynette's daughter, to hear how these fast-moving events are impacting her. For months now, she has been waiting for someone to finally find her mother.
She has already endured a birthday and Mother's Day completely alone, without her mom.
Make no mistake, this is massive. When you suddenly see this level of activity, the feeling is hard to describe. I will let Carly tell you herself, because she is joining me in just a moment.
To talk about what this massive search and recovery team arriving in the Bahamas means to her.
Remember, I told you in our last update that they were bringing serious gear.
We are talking specialized dive teams and a high-tech, remotely operated vehicle for deep water. A specialized ROV. You might remember those from the intense coverage of Flight MH370 when that plane vanished. So they are preparing for a massive deep-water search. You will witness all of it firsthand. First, investigators headed straight to the Abaco Inn. That is ground zero for this mystery. The venue holding crucial security footage of Brian and Lynette leaving, which they refused to release.
As it turns out, the Royal Bahamian Police ordered them to keep that tape strictly under wraps.
Regardless, the Coast Guard still managed to secure a portion of that footage. While multiple security cameras cover the Abaco Inn, authorities did not obtain the full recording.
They only recovered fragments.
But there is still missing footage from the inn that could pinpoint the exact moment the couple left, revealing vital clues about their body language.
Either way, Brian claims they departed around 7:30 p.m. Just minutes later, he alleges he was steering the vessel out of the White Sound Channel
When she suddenly fell off the stern.
claiming they were separated by rough waves, heavy winds, and strong tides, except weather data proves none of that existed.
So the search resumed today. The Coast Guard is utilizing the Abaco Inn as their tactical staging ground.
The property features large, accessible docks where heavy search vessels can easily pull in and tie up.
And deploy.
This lets them quickly shuttle personnel to their temporary lodging on Elbow Cay before deploying search teams out across the vast Sea of Abaco.
It is a massive search area, but listen closely to this.
In a fitting tribute, the Coast Guard cutter Margaret Norvell, named after a legendary female keeper, joined the mission.
That massive patrol boat initially arrived just north of Man-O-War Cay.
While that is well north of their target zones near Elbow Cay and Marsh Harbor, it is still within striking distance.
And interestingly enough, the vessel never actually dropped anchor during this time.
You would expect them to anchor, but they kept the ship mobile.
Instead, they deployed their RIB, launching a specialized team of federal agents, searchers, and divers.
The cutter then cruised southward, making its last known appearance just off the eastern coast of Elbow Cay. I shared that photo earlier. The final image ever captured of Lynette and Brian Hooker together. Standing beside the Abaco Inn pool, they were staring out at the wild, roaring Atlantic Ocean.
And that is precisely the area where the Coast Guard vessel was last spotted. Tracking south from Man-O-War Cay, the ship re-emerged directly off the coast of Elbow Cay.
At that point, they deployed one of their tenders, which is a smaller support craft used to shuttle searchers back and forth. That rigid inflatable boat
Was spotted slicing at high speed straight into Tiluca.
This confirms that Tilu was a primary focus of today's search operations. While we cannot confirm if active divers entered Tilucat, we do know that a dive team was deployed immediately after leaving the cutter, spending the entire day searching the eastern shallows of Marsh Harbor.
And there is one highly specific location we need to look at.
Now, one key area of interest in Marsh Harbor lies just south of where Brian claims he washed ashore. He did not wash up. Total garbage.
But one of these crucial locations is named Witch Point, as in Halloween witches.
Witch Point.
And just north of Witch Point, if you study the map, you will spot a square cutout of deep, dark water.
And clearly, it is not natural.
It turns out, this is an abandoned man-made harbor where old industrial workboats used to dock and run out of.
But it is incredibly close to where Brian Hooker's dinghy was eventually found.
And recovered by the local crew, the Hopetown Volunteer Fire and Rescue.
Please support them generously. They are entirely volunteers. And this is even further south than that shipyard where he, casually wandered in, looking around, peering between the boats, and then lazily calling out,
Help! Help!
but barely raising his voice after allegedly being marooned, floating out there for 9 hours if his story was true. It was not.
So the dive team headed down to that abandoned cutout harbor today.
And they deployed their remotely operated vehicle, the ROV, deep underwater, while our field team stood by to watch the entire operation. In fact, they actually helped out.
There was a massive amount of work to do, and multiple crews were busy handling various tasks all at the same time today.
Today was meant to be a simple travel day from Florida to the Bahamas, but it quickly turned into heavy field work. They had very little daylight, but it was incredibly impressive watching these guys get to work.
Let me play this clip so you can hear the hum of the ROV and watch the team in action.
Listen to that. Hear it?
Looking closely at these photos, honestly, the classic phrase comes to mind that not all heroes wear capes, because this crew has been working tirelessly on this case.
And there they are.
And there is young Maggie aboard the over-the-horizon fast boat,
Which is launching from the cutter toward active search areas.
So there she goes, heading straight out to do her job.
She is scheduled to be out there for 4 days.
Again, we owe a huge thanks to Broward County for releasing Maggie to assist the Coast Guard with this crucial investigation.
I also want to highlight that a sharp-eyed observer spotted yet another patrol vessel being launched by the Royal Bahamian Police Force.
This actually resembles one of the security boats Lindsay and I noticed
During our initial coverage in the Bahamas, about 7 weeks ago.
Regardless, they were getting that boat into the water too.
So, it seems highly likely they were supporting the active Coast Guard search.
Because let us be clear, the Coast Guard has extensive GPS data and a very tight plan for these next few days.
Ultimately, a massive amount of transit was required today, just to position everyone at their proper search grids.
And that is likely exactly what the Royal Bahamian Police Force was doing when they deployed that additional craft.
We are incredibly grateful to the observer who captured those images.
We have also received numerous visual updates from trusted sources scattered across the Abacos.
One anonymous source, who asked to remain unnamed, sent over these specific photographs.
These photos show search operations being actively conducted on the northwest side of Lovers.
That region has seen extensive rebuilding following the catastrophic damage left behind by Hurricane Dorian.
We spotted a derelict pool. In fact, Nathan, who has done incredible legwork out there, scouted the entire perimeter and spotted that same pool.
We shared some footage of it in an earlier update.
But now, new photos are streaming in from viewers who are eager to assist this investigation.
People offering whatever resources they can to support the American team.
Acting as local guides or helping to secure boats, golf carts, captains, and places to stay. The community support is incredible. These latest snapshots actually came straight from Captain Snow.
Captain Snow, we really appreciate you stepping up. This is our first time connecting with you, and these images are incredibly helpful.
Here, you can clearly see the Coast Guard crew operating aboard the over-the-horizon vessel. Now, let us focus on the northwest side of Lubber's quarters, because
during the initial Coast Guard search, Brian was feeding investigators such a fabricated story that they looked elsewhere. Consequently, Maggie never searched over that way, just south of the northern ridge. But right now, Maggie is finally covering that ground. We obtained compelling footage of Maggie working across those highly isolated, hidden beaches. These are the quiet spots Brian and Lynette likely frequented. Pristine shores from happier times when they paddleboarded and explored the breathtaking Abacos. So, if you had to remember in the dead of night some isolated spot you knew well, and a prime location to conceal remains, the northern end of Lubber's west side is highly suspicious. It seems like a highly plausible spot. Still, seeing federal investigators actively working this terrain on the ground is absolutely fascinating.
now that Maggie is back on land, she has another critical task waiting for her.
She absolutely needs to check that dinghy. Bahamian authorities are currently holding the couple's tender from the Soulmate vessel. It is sitting in impound, though we cannot confirm if it is stored indoors or out. If it is outside, we must hope it was stored flipped over, so 7 weeks of harsh weather did not wash away crucial microscopic evidence or scent molecules Maggie could easily target.
We just don't know.
But getting Maggie inside that boat is absolutely vital. In one of our previous updates, we discussed the specific timeline required for a deceased person to, well, how should we phrase this?
The specific amount of time before the scent of death begins escaping into the surrounding environment.
This represents the precise stage of decay a trained cadaver dog alerts on. Forensic experts point to 3 hours. Roughly 3 hours post-mortem is all it takes for a body to release the chemical signatures Maggie can easily detect.
So, let us consider a scenario, because nothing is proven yet and Brian Hooker faces no official charges. But what if he did orchestrate her disappearance and had to figure out a desperate way to dispose of her remains? How much time did that take? And how long was Lynette kept inside that small tender? If she remained there for more than 3 hours,
Then there is a strong chance Maggie will find a trace.
We can only hold out hope for a breakthrough and pray for the absolute best outcome.
hopefully they can locate Lynette soon and bring her home to rest.
Which ultimately leads to the next step, seeing Brian Hooker led away in handcuffs.
I say possibly because I know how federal agents operate. They operate completely differently. In a federal investigation, they secure 95% of their case before making an arrest.
in state court, prosecutors build maybe 30 or 40% of their case, then investigate 4. Another year or 2 before they finally bring the suspect to trial. Sometimes 3 or 4 years.
But in the federal system, an arrest means a trial is just months away. So is Brian Hooker facing imminent arrest?
Absolutely, without question. If detectives find Lynette's body, it is a certainty. But what if her remains are never found? Is he off the hook? Not a chance. Prosecutors do not need a body to secure a conviction. During my 38 years as an investigative reporter, I have covered dozens of cases that ended in successful murder convictions. Even though a body was never found, because the mountain of circumstantial evidence was overwhelming. We are talking about lies, erratic behavior in the dead of night, and suspicious movements. And critical GPS tracking data.
If you missed our last update, Brian recently hired a new defense attorney. It is a calculated move. This lawyer is a former Department of Justice prosecutor.
So, this lawyer knows federal law inside and out. He understands federal prosecution tactics, which is crucial because Brian Hooker is about to face a massive federal reckoning very soon.
Retaining this attorney was definitely a calculated defensive play. From what I understand, this new defense counsel is based out of Michigan. We do not know if Brian returned to Michigan after. Allegedly caring for his ailing mother, his excuse for suddenly fleeing the Bahamas instead of staying behind to keep. Searching for his wife. He previously claimed it would take a higher authority to make him leave. Honestly, that story is just another massive lie.
Instead, he has been laying low in Sacramento, where his mother was supposedly sick.
I do not buy that either. I seriously doubt he was there to care for her health. Regardless, he returned to Michigan and was recently spotted by some of his former coworkers at AT&T. I would not call them friends, they do not like him, but they confirmed he was indeed back in his Michigan hometown, only for him to disappear once again.
Likely heading back to Sacramento before hiring this new legal counsel, who is reportedly based in Michigan.
This suggests he either traveled back to Michigan or held extensive remote meetings. We still do not fully understand this suspect's modus operandi, but his actions are incredibly suspicious. Uncovering the truth will take a collective effort. He was highly deceptive.
Brian Hooker was incredibly calculating. And how do we know this?
Because he was actually fired from AT&T for dishonest behavior.
Specifically for hiding his location, lying, and tampering with his company vehicle's GPS unit to mask his whereabouts. The man is a master of evasion and surveillance evasion, so if he did what I believe he did to Lynette Hooker, he undoubtedly took steps to cover his tracks and conceal the evidence afterward. But his schemes are no match for the Coast Guard Investigative Service. He simply is not, and he is certainly no match for Maggie either.
Now, there are a few critical updates regarding my close friend.
Working on this complex investigation has connected me with some incredible, dedicated people. Dean Zanzol. You might recall that Dean and his daughters provided that crucial nighttime surveillance footage looking across the Sea of Abaco toward Elbow Cay, which captured the vessel Soulmate.
It revealed highly suspicious midnight activity. Just a sea of flashing searchlights.
Now, Dean has contacts on Lubber's quarters, who managed to recover fabric matching the exact shade of Lynette's beach cover-up.
Remember the bright aqua cover-up she was wearing when she vanished?
No thanks to Brian, who flat out told searchers she was only wearing a black two-piece swimsuit with nothing else on.
She actually wore a distinct deep blue Conch Republic scarf wrapped around her head.
Along with that vibrant aqua-colored beach cover-up.
And evidence suggests she might have been carrying a black waist pack, too.
At least judging by the photo taken at the Abaco Inn.
Clearly, Brian was lying straight to us.
In any case, local searchers discovered a piece of clothing matching Lynette's shirt and promptly handed it over to the Coast Guard.
Critically, they didn't just hand over the evidence, they provided the exact GPS coordinates of where they found it.
An incredibly smart move by whoever found it. Your quick thinking is highly appreciated.
Thank you for taking action and helping this investigation.
So, to be clear, this is the northwestern tip of Lubber's quarters, where Maggie was actively searching today.
While teams also scoured areas further south on the island, the focus remained entirely on the western coastline.
Essentially, specifically, the central western coast, which is highly isolated, featuring a vast stretch of desolate and abandoned beaches. It would be incredibly easy to slip ashore undetected, perhaps using an 8-foot dinghy under the cover of darkness.
Either way, GPS data must place Brian right in this sector. Otherwise, why would investigators focus so heavily here?
And clearly, now, these unfolding developments are deeply unsettling for me, and I'm sure they affect you just as deeply.
But their impact on Carly is on a whole different level. Carly Ellsworth is Lynette's daughter. I spoke with her recently to ask what this massive, coordinated search effort truly means to her family.
Here is that conversation. A quick word from our sponsor. When was the last time you actually saw a doctor?
No, not just Googling your symptoms.
And not just toughing it out, but actually booking an appointment.
If you have been delaying that doctor's visit because finding a trusted professional who actually accepts your insurance plan and has open slots is just too frustrating, I completely understand. ZocDoc is a completely free app and website where
you can instantly find and book in-network physicians with over 150,000 options across 50 states.
I use it myself to find dermatologists, dentists, and primary care specialists.
You can filter by specific symptoms and book within seconds, with most appointments scheduled in 24 to 72 hours.
So, stop delaying your healthcare. Head over to ZocDoc.com/Banfield and instantly book a highly rated medical professional today. Once again, that is Zoc.
Doc.com/Banfield. This segment is sponsored by ZocDoc. Now, Carly, today marks a massive development. The United States Coast Guard is actively deployed, boots on the ground. What is going through your mind?
I definitely feel more hopeful this time. They seem to have a much clearer target area.
Because of that, I truly believe we are going to get answers during this deployment. And let me tell you, this is no minor deployment.
They arrived with a massive cutter stretching over 150 feet, more than 25 personnel, specialized vehicles, ROVs, and active divers.
Honestly, it looks like a full armada.
Exactly. I was unaware of the vehicles, but I definitely knew about the rescue swimmers. It is incredible, and we know those specialized remote-operated vehicles will be scanning deep underwater.
Honestly, they have even been searching underwater today.
Oh, those guys. Yeah, absolutely.
Still, this must feel like you are finally getting real momentum on this case.
These investigators are completely dedicated to finding your mother.
Yeah.
It is incredibly reassuring to have this support and people helping search. There is simply no way I could face this alone.
And let me tell you,
watching the Coast Guard arrive and seeing how many local volunteers are backing them up is incredible.
So many residents from the Abacos in the Bahamas are stepping up to help.
That has to feel reassuring. Yes, it really does.
Particularly when we went down there, the community was so supportive during our stay.
It is just comforting. And now, here we are, talking about it.
It has now been 7 weeks and 3 days since your mother vanished.
I can only imagine how utterly powerless you must have felt during much of that time.
Exactly. It is mostly just waiting, hoping for any kind of update. Even though I know they are working hard behind closed doors, the waiting is exhausting.
You also know the relentless effort coming from the Coast Guard Investigative Service agents.
Like I mentioned earlier, these federal investigators are working 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. How does seeing that kind of dedication feel?
It feels incredibly reassuring, knowing this is not just a shift to them. They genuinely care. It is truly comforting. And I am grateful they are treating this with real urgency, because I cannot do this alone.
Having their assistance is huge. They are genuinely committed to investigating the truth and uncovering exactly what happened to her.
So, I am just relieved they are exhausting every single lead.
Were you shocked to see Maggie?
The specialized Broward County search dog returned to the scene with her handler, Chris.
Yes, I am so glad.
Today, her search focused on the west side of Lubbers Cay.
Before, she searched the east side of Lubbers because everyone was trying to cross-reference Brian's initial account.
Now, investigators have far more evidence to work with.
They secured hard electronic evidence, his actual GPS data. What are your thoughts on that development?
As you have dissected Brian Hooker's shifting statements and his connection to this mystery,
What kind of conclusion have you reached?
I always suspected that his version of events was a complete lie.
But actually knowing they now have proof, indisputable, hard evidence that he was fabricating stories.
I am just relieved they are aggressively investigating and uncovered this. My gut told me he was deceptive, especially after those threats.
So I am incredibly thankful they pushed for answers.
Which specific threats are you referring to?
Just the incidents from 2 years ago where he physically choked her.
When your mother confided in her close friend Rachel that he had choked her
And bruised her body.
she took photos of the bruising on her back and shared that Brian told her, "I wish I had finished the job."
Exactly.
It must be incredibly difficult to process, knowing she lived in constant fear and struggled with him so frequently.
Right.
I mean, I noticed the physical toll first, the sudden, dramatic weight loss. She looked so fragile, dropping down to barely 130 pounds.
And it hit home because I had been in that exact kind of toxic relationship myself, shedding pounds from pure, unrelenting stress.
So I kept thinking. The red flags were everywhere, yet they always put on this perfect couple act whenever I was around.
So, when you were on board the Soulmate, that was back in February, correct? During that trip to the Bahamas, how would you describe their actual dynamic?
Well, Brian was always incredibly talkative.
My mother was quieter, definitely not as talkative as Brian, but
You see, whenever we had family gatherings, I would always just stick close to my mom and hang out. And honestly, they always seemed to get along fine.
even if they did start to argue, they would immediately drop the subject and shift to talking about something else.
So I never actually witnessed anything alarming.
I had absolutely no reason to suspect anything terrible was happening. Sure, I knew they had their moments, but I never imagined it was a constant, repetitive cycle.
Do you find it extraordinary that Brian called you only once to spin this total garbage story about what happened to your mother, and then completely abandoned you after that?
Not another call. He never showed up, never offered to mourn this tragedy with you. He never even asked you to join the search in the Bahamas. He literally just erased himself from your world.
Well, he did attempt to.
He tried calling and texting, but I ignored him.
Once I went on the news and spoke out, he finally stopped reaching out altogether. So I suppose there was a brief effort.
But I refused to buy his ridiculous cover story or his crocodile tears. Right. What kind of outreach did he make?
Can you share what those final text messages said before he went completely silent?
He claimed some woman would look after Rosie and me. It was a group chat between the three of us, mapping out how this stranger would support us. He said she was wonderful and swore he wanted to be there, but claimed duty kept him where he was.
Rosie replied saying she loved him, but I chose to stay completely silent.
And that was pretty much the final exchange. So when Brian said he needed to be somewhere, where exactly was that? Searching down in the Bahamas.
Sure, but that was only week 1. What happened in the weeks following?
By the second week, I tried making contact, but he had already fled. Did you ever receive another word? Any texts, emails, or anything? So he only contacted you early on, when he still thought he could sell you a fake narrative. And the second he fled the Bahamas, the communication stopped entirely. Never. Let us remember, this is a man who acted as your father since you were just 3 years old. Yeah, I definitely viewed him as one of my actual parents. Because, well, he was always that central father figure in my life, even if I never explicitly called him Dad.
But did he not refer to himself as Dad in one of his voice messages or text to you?
Yes. He did that in a group chat with Rosie and me, but I never once addressed him that way. I think when I was younger, I used to call him Dad, but then my real father stepped in and said, "You are not calling him that."
So I just said, okay, and I stopped calling him that.
Sounds like your father had some real foresight there, did he not? Not at all. He really was not a fan of his either. But listen, you are one of the few people who has actually been to the exact search locations down in the Bahamas. You have been to the Abaco Inn. That is right where they were today. You have been all over those waters. You navigated the Lubbers area in the Sea of Abaco, and you have been all through Marsh Harbor. What goes through your mind as you watch footage and photos of investigators moving through those exact same spots? Especially seeing them with all that heavy equipment and manpower. Honestly, I have this sinking feeling she is out in the water, weighted down by those missing scuba weights. But that is just my gut. So,
I highly doubt she is buried on land. That entire area is solid limestone, and it is incredibly difficult to dig through.
because of that, I strongly suspect she is in the ocean. And if Brian actually did this, mind you, I am not declaring he did, since he has not been charged with anything yet, but he would have been working in complete darkness with very little time. It had to be a spot he already knew. You do not just go exploring in the pitch black with a, 3-horsepower electric motor and an 8-foot dinghy. Yes, so I suspect she could be near Snappa's, or maybe around that ruined old dock facility at the far end of the marina. Right. That is a real possibility, because we actually visited that spot, scouted around, and took some photos. So, who knows? They did that constantly, correct?
When you were not around, Brian and Lynette would take their paddleboards out to scout isolated shorelines and secluded hidden spots.
So he definitely had some familiarity with various locations throughout the Abaco Islands. Considering they had already been staying there for what, 9 weeks? Exactly, a couple of months. And did you notice this strong urge on most days to just go out, explore new territory, and seek out hidden landmarks? Whenever the wind died down, we would try to go paddleboarding. One particular morning was really calm, so we headed out on the boards. Then, over the next few days, we navigated around Marsh Harbor, scouting through all the narrow waterways and dense mangrove forests. On another day, we traveled up to the shoreline near Snapper Point. Do you recall that place? Tell me more about those mangroves. You mentioned you would regularly venture inside them. Just a bit. If you are looking directly at the restaurant near Conch Inn, there are navigable mangroves off to the left. We navigated through there, hoping to spot some sea turtles. So he would absolutely know those specific mangrove channels inside that harbor. I always describe it by referencing the mooring ball situated right in the harbor, just off the Conch Inn. So you are saying, if you face the Conch Inn directly, the entire mangrove system would be right there on your left. Yes, exactly. Tiny waterways, and there is even a shipwrecked vessel resting over there. That would be a key location to search, especially if the tracking data places him near there.
You know,
It is reassuring to see they are not just guessing how far that vessel could travel based on battery life and the harsh weather. Now, investigators are mapping their search grid using his actual hard GPS coordinates. That suspect was carrying his phone and wearing a smartwatch. And he likely had some of your mother's personal belongings with him too.
evidence that, if he is guilty, he was trying to discard.
That is deeply disturbing. It is a chilling scenario to contemplate.
But thank goodness that search teams and Coast Guard investigators have solid forensic leads to work with now. Is there anything you would like to say directly to those detectives, Carly? I know these guys are relentless. One investigator in particular is working Saturdays, Sundays, and all 5 weekdays, pulling late shifts until 1 in the morning.
It feels like he is hunting for answers 24 hours a day.
Yes, I sometimes tell my Coast Guard contact that they are probably already 10 steps ahead of my own amateur tracking.
But he just says, no, keep it coming. Send over whatever data you track down anyway. So I did. It is obvious they are working hard and staying ahead of the curve.
They have far more experience with missing persons cases.
I am honestly just relieved they are dedicating so many resources to it. Yet, I still worry she might have been hidden in the trash. Because maybe Brian knew that cadaver dogs struggle to isolate a scent in municipal landfills.
Or she is weighted down out in the deep water.
That is just my gut feeling, though I hope my instincts are wrong. I can certainly understand why you are so grateful for their dedicated, round-the-clock efforts. And I truly mean that. As soon as the Coast Guard cutter Margaret Norvell arrived, they did not even pause to drop anchor. They launched their rescue boat and immediately took off. They were working immediately, likely less than an hour after the cutter pulled up near the northern edge of Man-O-War Cay. The water there is deep enough for their vessel, which drafts about 9.5 feet. That ship runs incredibly deep. Yet within an hour, they were hunting. No pausing to check in at a hotel, no downtime at all. Just pure, exhausting duty. That must bring you some comfort. If you could speak to those search teams directly, what would you say? I am deeply grateful that everyone is doing everything in their power to uncover the truth and push forward to get us these vital answers.
Because almost everyone suspecting his alibi knows that his story is a lie.
So, I am just incredibly relieved that detectives looked past his claims and found so much evidence already. Do you have a direct message for Brian? Not at all. I never want to speak to him or have him near me again.
He has only brought toxicity into my life, and I refuse to tolerate that kind of dark mindset anymore.
What kind of justice do you hope he faces?
My hope is that he rots behind bars for the rest of his life.
And honestly, who knows?
Having worked in a correctional facility, I know inmates have zero tolerance for domestic abusers. Good luck, Carly. Thank you so much for sitting down with me. We will stay in close contact as this investigation unfolds over the next 4 days. That was just the initial plan, getting the Coast Guard out there on site.
We will keep in touch, and we are all hoping for a positive outcome.
Thank you. Same here.
Here is what I can tell you. The search teams pushed hard, working late into the pitch-black night.
I know this because some crew members were only brought back to the dock long after nightfall. They worked incredibly late. They squeezed out every single drop of Bahamian daylight tonight, only heading back under cover of darkness. They are planning a very early start tomorrow.
They will be back out on the water by 8:30 tomorrow morning, heading to another spot on Marsh Harbor.
As I mentioned today, they were focusing on that old, abandoned square harbor situated just north of Witch Point. Tomorrow, they are targeting another highly specific spot over on Marsh Harbor.
Let me tell you something. Brian Hooker did not just drift onto Marsh Harbor completely powerless and without any motor.
Oh, sure. He claims he was drifting for 9 hours because his wife fell overboard, and so on. Except he washed ashore more than once, which, as you know, is incredibly tough to pull off when you have no motor, strong winds are pushing you, and you are totally helpless. He is a United States Marine. Helpless? Not a chance. He made landfall multiple times on Marsh Harbor. How does that make sense? It only works when you are lying, Brian Hooker. Tick-tock.
They have you cornered. Now they are just wrapping it up.
Either way, I will bring you to that search spot tomorrow,
where they will also be conducting their search. Let's all keep our fingers crossed and say a prayer that they find Lynette and bring her home to her daughter, Carly, and her mother, Darlene.
They deserve to have her home. And you know what else? Everyone deserves to see Brian Hooker in handcuffs, because hopefully that is exactly where this investigation is heading. Thank you everyone for listening, and thank you for watching.
Just remember, the truth is not just serious, it is drop-dead serious.